Hello everyone and welcome to this Q&A part of the San Francisco Indie Film Fest. Today I'll be talking to Katrina Ludwig of This Is Where I Meet You. Katrina, hi, thanks for joining us.
Hi Frankie, nice to see you and thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yes, so This Is Where I Meet You. I was really pleasantly surprised by your film, Katrina, because usually, I have to be honest, those sort of genre films, they're not my favourite, but I didn't know what to expect, and I sat there and I watched it, and it was so sweet and such a nice sort of breath of fresh air within the sort of lockdown that I'm sure everyone's experiencing. So it was that really nice. I think you do a really great job of helping the audience connect to the characters so quickly, because the script is so real, and the shots that you have and the length that you hold them for are very personal. It almost feels like you're a fly on the wall at points of the conversation and stuff. So yeah, I think it's a very gentle film, but I think it's a very powerful film. It's funny as well because my brother's actually an actor, so he's a few years older than me, and it's quite funny because it does have a bit of a connection now. I can sort of sympathize with the main character because of that connection of, you know, you're always having to deal with rejection, and you just don't know what's around the corner. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. So that's the first thing. So thank you for sharing that and giving me the opportunity to watch it. The festival as well, I don't know if you meant this, but the festival definitely felt like a bit of a metaphor to me. That was something that I really liked. I didn't know if that was intentional, or obviously you like to let audiences take away what they want, but it did really feel like the festival was like a metaphor of what you should be doing or what everyone else is doing, and where the fun is. So yeah, I don't know if that was intentional. I just thought I'd ask quickly before we get into the
first of all, let me just say I'm full of gratitude right now for everything you just said. It really, really warms my heart, and it's just so beautiful, all that you saw and that you received actually. And yeah, I'm impressed, and I'm really happy about this. And well, you know, I mean, should we dive right in, or like?
So I can start from the very beginning, but I just because that festival metaphor. When I thought, oh, that's so clever, Frankie. But obviously, so I was just intrigued to know okay. We can get back to that if you want, but I was just intrigued to know if that was intentional or.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, like more or less the whole theme of the film and everything that went on is in a way intentional, and still it is or it was things that we found, because the film was made with improvisation. We worked a lot with improvisation, and that maybe accounts for, or parts of it account for, the authenticity that you experienced. But then again, you know, the whole film came together, or came about actually very spontaneously. And so a lot of things were found on the way. And the festival specifically that you just named, that was always part of the story. That was always intentional. Okay, yeah. It was always kind of a location and yet a point of release, and where everything would come together. So like that was always planted in a way, and we needed that for the story to work. But so many things that happened were like, you know, we just found them, or we investigate together and got there together. And yeah, actually a lot of the things that happened while shooting the movie, you know, we just being there, eyes open, present, and receiving everything around us and making something of it. And that was beautiful. It was a lot of fun to shoot that movie.
I mean, it's interesting to hear you put it like that, because obviously that is what you like to think, but always to hear it from the director himself makes it even more poignant, I guess. It's interesting that you mention about the improvisation, because I was obviously going to ask about that, because it seems at points, the one scene that I think sticks out to me is where they're on the rocks, and that's when they're really having a difficult time, and he's like, I don't think it's working, and you forget for a second, you're watching this, you know, you're watching this film. It's like you actually really invested in them pouring their hearts out to each other. So I guess the question is, was the level of improvisation something that you always knew you wanted to have, or was it something that just evolved in itself? And is that your style? Is that how you like to make films?
Yes and no, in the way that it was totally planned that we would work with improvisation, because this movie, and now I'm basically just going back a little bit towards or like to how the movie came about. It was my graduation feature here at the film school in Munich.
Okay.
And it was actually a film. I had initially planned another film for my graduation feature, and that didn't, get financed, sadly, and we were really bummed about it. But so the question was like, I have just very little money and very little time, and what can I do? And so I wanted to do something that I hadn't done before, but really enjoyed for its vitality and authenticity, and that was working with improvisation. So the plan was like that all along, and I didn't write a script for This Is Why I Meet You, but I wrote an outline, and that outline, of course, it had like all the actions and the plot lined out, but it was open enough for us to improvise the dialogues and a lot of the specific scenes and on location. And so there was like some red line for us to work on, but then again, it was free and it was open enough for us to just work with what we had there. And what I tried to do while working with the actors and also with the camera, we were really just a very little crew, like actors, camera assistant, sound, me, and my husband also, who helped along the way, because we could not really afford a big crew. But we all just worked a lot with feeling and connection. So that was like, that was another thing, when you improvise, some directors and some movies, for me at least as a viewer, they tend to create text, but sometimes I felt while watching improv movies or mumblecore movies, it lacked a bit of feeling, and I always wanted to be close to the characters and really have the audience go through that ride with them, and we feel what they're going through. And so we try to improvise, but yet connect, and as a group, as a whole team, actually work very organically through the actions, through the feeling. And I guess that's what you see. And
that is definitely what you see and what you receive. I think that that's part of the pleasant surprise for me, because usually I think that style is so rare and quite hard to do, that when you watch a film that does it so well, you're a little bit taken aback, because you are suddenly really connected to these characters that I suppose usually you wouldn't really feel as if you were that connected to. And the performances as well. I mean, we'll get onto those, but they obviously really help the case. So taking it back a little bit. So the initial theme, I think, that comes straight across is this sort of self-discovery. So I guess quite a simple question is, why did you want to make a film about self-discovery? Is that something that's important to you? Is that just a story you wanted to tell, or?
Yeah, well, I think we all, I don't think that it's clear. It's a fact that we all go through those phases where we discover ourselves, not only as teenager, but also as adults, and it's in different phases of our life. So I think that is something that everyone can relate to. And, being in film school, for me as the director, that is a phase of self-discovery in itself. And you discover your voice, and you discover like what kind of movies you want to make, what interests you, but really who you are at heart. And so that was something I could really, where I could really relate to the character of Charlotte. And Elaine Blechinger, who plays Charlotte, she herself said that this is something she knows so well. And like you said before, with your brother, who is an actor, you know those times when you're either in the middle of it, or when you're trying to reconnect to that initial feeling, and who are you really, and what do you want to do, and what are the stories you want to tell. And so that is something that is of course part of my own life, part of being an artist. And I, as I said before, the movie that I initially planned for my graduation, it also was connected to the theme of self-discovery. So
Cool. Okay. I think that I was expecting that answer, but it always makes sense to ask, because it's always nice to hear you put it in your own words. And I think that when you're watching the film, well, especially me, and I think generally the audience, when they're watching the film, the key is if they start asking themselves them questions while they're watching the film, then I think it's an extremely powerful film. Because I caught myself when she first meets Tammy, and she's asking, what do you want to do, and she's pretending the questions for the blog, and there's a few questions after that where you start to think, actually, yeah, you start to reflect on yourself. I don't know if that was just me, I was just having a moment, but I really do think that the way you engineer the scenes and the chemistry as well that's on the screen, which brings me on to my next question, actually, was I do think you have created, and you spoke about it yourself there, with not only the cast but the crew. There was this connection or this chemistry. So, and I think that's very very well done, and it definitely, you can see that. So my question, I guess, was it hard to find that chemistry? Did you have to find the right person to make sure that chemistry was there, or did you get the cast and then work on building that chemistry, or did you just have it?
Yeah. Let me just ask you really quick, because I have a bad internet connection, I think, today. Do you hear me? Do you see me? Everything all right? Because you just dropped out.
Is mine not okay?
Yeah, you just dropped out for a bit, but I heard the question. So if you see me, then I just continue.
Yeah, you're absolutely fine. So
Okay,
if I can sort of re-ask it, or if
no, it's fine. I think I understand the bit that was important for me to hook on.
Cool.
So yeah, well, actually, we had only one day of, you could call it rehearsal, before we went out to shoot the film, and we went to Croatia. We shot it in Croatia, and so the time to connect with the team and the actor and all of us, it was really short. And what I did there in Croatia, on set, every morning we would do some sort of receptivity warm up together, so like really getting into our bodies and to be present and to feel each other, feel the energy of the other, so that when we would go out and shoot scenes, that we would always feel where we are and where the other ones are in the team, and that we would really connect with each other and work as a group, like really on the beats, you could say. And yeah, that was the chemistry that we tried to create every day, and that was really a nice way of working.
Wow, that's quite amazing, because you actually do see some of that when she first sees Tammy and they're doing the yoga and stuff.
Yeah.
There's a bit where as well, Tammy sort of runs her hands up the arm, and it's like pulling the energy. I haven't seen that anywhere, and that also felt really, I don't know, it's like a really sensory response. It felt really nice to watch in a weird way. So it's interesting that you sort of was doing a little bit of that before actually shooting, because I guess that does help.
Well, I mean, yeah, sorry.
No, yeah, I was just going to say, I guess that does help.
Yeah. Well, we didn't really do exactly what Tammy is doing with Charlotte, that kind of way of working. But I mean, you're right about, the kind of sensuality that comes with it, or like, as I would call it, the energy that you feel, the energy lines between each other.
Yes.
And that we try to take into the scenes. So I think that kind of, comes with the dynamic between Charlotte and Tammy. And Tammy really is this kind of open and calm and present character, and so she is there and she goes with the flow, and that is really helpful for Charlotte, and also a bit healing, I'd say. And that is something that we really try to work on as a group. But then again, I must say, it came natural to Helene Blechinger, who played Charlotte, and Tala Aldin, who plays Tammy. So I think they were really a great match, and they clicked very well, and it was just nice to watch them. It was really beautiful. Yeah.
Well, that's not surprising that you say that, because I think you can see that. So yeah. We've spoken a little bit about the sort of two main characters, but I do think that Benno is Benno, is that right?
It is Benno, yeah.
Is excellent, and I think that you'll probably get a few comments about him, or have had a few comments about him, because I don't know, I just feel like everyone needs to meet a Benno at some point in their life, even if it's just funny and just sweet and. So I guess the question here is the characters and how sort of unique the characters are to themselves. Was that something that was always in the original script, or was it something that sprung up, especially Benno, I guess, because he's the one that sticks out the most?
Mhm. Well, I mean, it was always part of the script for him to be a shaman and to be
Yeah.
this kind of very cuckoo character, you know, in his own world, you could say. But then again, I mean, I must really give it to Peter Marty, who is playing Benno,
Yeah.
because he came ready from day one, and he was equipped with everything. And like, I saw him in another movie, an actual mumblecore movie from Germany. I saw him in a minor role, and I really liked him for his energy and also just his whole face, you know, and
Yeah.
appearance. And yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I called him and I said, look, you know, I have this role. It's like a smaller role, but really it's something I think you could enjoy working with. And he was like, oh, a shaman, that's great. You know, I'm going to find rocks and feathers, and I have a drum, and we can really, like, you know, just shake things up a bit. And he was so ready to go from day one, and really made it his own. And that is really, you know, his unique personality. And of course also yeah, like not engagement, but like he was really willing to have fun and play with us, and I enjoyed that very much.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like you really, I mean, hit it off with this cast, because every you know, you have, obviously you're not going to tell me the bad parts, but obviously it doesn't seem like there were any bad parts of the cast. So wow, I guess it really was like
Yeah.
that all come together nicely. So moving on, I suppose we've spoken a little bit more about the themes of the film. I think it also makes sense to talk a little bit about the practicality of the film. I think
Mhm.
you do really well in that you can create a story and you can create a feature film with such a minimal use of, you know, it's mainly just about the characters. There's
Yeah.
not many locations. I was actually I did assume that we wasn't going to see the festival from at the start, because I just thought that was going to be maybe not necessarily a creative decision, but a decision where actually having a festival might have been too tricky, and I still think that would have worked.
Mhm.
So I guess, yeah, I was really impressed that what you could create with such sort of limited resources almost. And I guess my question is, was that again an artistic choice, or was that more of a choice because, you know, you're an independent filmmaker? I guess I'm answering the question myself, aren't I?
Well, I mean, everyone would answer them a bit differently. I say it's both. You know,
Yeah.
it was because we had a restricted amount of money. We didn't had any film funding money. We didn't had like a big production TV channel, anything. So just that little amount from the film school and some of their equipment was all we had. And so it was clear from the get-go that it was going to be a small movie, and we had only a very, very short amount of time to do it. And so like my whole mindset and that of every one of us involved was, we go down there and we have a concept, of course, we have a plan, but we see what we can find and we see how we work with what we find, you know. And so we were just really lucky to find amazing people who would, you know, support us along the way, and dreamy locations. I mean, I really love the landscape down there, and it's such a big part in the movie. And that is of course an artistic choice, because I really think that nature contributes to the story and to the journey all the
For sure.
characters have. And so we were really lucky. But of course, you know, like every place that we went, every decision that we made it, or I made it creatively based. But the festival, I mean, it's interesting that you say that, because at the time I thought it needed to be in the festival, but it needed to be in the film, or else it would not be credible that George would like to be
Believable. Yeah.
DJ. Yeah, or believable.
Mm.
But then again, I was ready to do whatever, you know, like if they'd say no, we could not come in and film there, then we would have done something else, like film around it, or just show him trying to climb over a
Yeah.
fence
Yeah.
and being thrown out something. I mean, we were really open and ready to go, and whatever would come, you know, what happened. So yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's an amazing attitude to have. If you could bottle that, I would be first on the list. It's interesting. So was it a real festival then? I'm just curious, because it was obviously a real festival, and you just had to see what would, you know, you weren't bothered about people maybe looking, or you just sort of turned up and gave it a go?
No, the understanding was that if we would go in and we just had like, was just the actors and camera, because there were not so many tickets for everyone involved. So it was like a really small team that went in. And the understanding was that we would really focus on them and not film like, all these
for sure,
people.
which is what you do, because it's that
exactly.
thing.
It was really just about the atmosphere of the festival and them all, no, except for Benno, of course, all of them coming together and just really letting loose, and I knew that the energy would shift there, and it did. And it was important that Tammy and Charlotte came closer to each other, or got closer to each other. And that they would sort of witness Georg doing his thing, but he was not that important anymore to Charlotte, at least.
Sure,
it was just really a release for them to let loose. And I think from there, the energy between them also shifts a little bit, because it is really a new sort of wave or ride they go on after that.
No, it is. And I do think that if I take it back to the sort of the metaphor thing about the festival, that fits in really well with that as well, because I think that Charlotte isn't against doing things, but she at least tries it. She goes to the festival, and while she's there, she's enjoying it. So it's almost like no matter what she's doing, she's going to enjoy it. But ultimately, she knows that maybe her route is going to be slightly different. So that's also really nice. I really thought that was cool, and also gives you a chance to put some actual music in the. So I think it's around the middle, isn't it? I think it really gives it a bit of a lift, that part of the film. It's also interesting that you mentioned the location as well, because obviously, yes, it is really nice. And looking at that now, where we're stuck indoors in the middle of winter. That was the only thing I didn't like about the film. I'm joking. So I guess it's a very simple question is, because there is one of my favorite lines, actually. Tammy says, she's talking about the ocean, and she says, I think she says, "How could I ever leave?" I really like that part. So I just guess, was that always the location that it was going to be? How did you come to Croatia? Or
well, it was, Croatia, of course, is like close to Germany, and it is this kind of southern or Mediterranean feeling and landscape, and it's beautiful, and you have nice stable weather there, so like shooting conditions are pretty good. But actually, to be honest, before we did that movie, and even before I went down there to actually scout locations, I've never been to Croatia. That was my first time, and I went to look for the locations. I went location scouting the week before the shooting, simply because I didn't have any time before, I was producing myself. And so it was like, okay, we go down there for one weekend, we check how does it look. And of course you can, search over Google, and you can look at pictures, but we just went down there, we had a look around and tried to find something. And we found locations, and initially that were different ones. But like 2 days, I think, before we wanted to go down there and shoot, they called us and said, look, you cannot come anymore. And they had their reasons, but it was like, what are we going to do now? And so we went there, and the first day of our actual shooting schedule, which was only a week, by the way, went to scouting new locations. And so this was really lucky that we found all of them basically in one day, or while we were shooting. And but like the feeling that I wanted to convey, and the contrast between the couple drifting apart, and in that setting, in that perfect setting where everyone is going with a big expectation of how it should be, that was always set there. And I was really like, okay, we have to find something there, because it's just so interesting, the contrast. I
think it's interesting to get to talk to you about this, because, and I hope that the audience that watch this Q&A as well do see how you did have troubles along the way, but you've still managed to sort of use that to just, to your advantage in a way. And it's quite incredible that you've created this piece of art, this film, whilst having to deal with everything else that comes along with independent filmmaking. And and the trouble.
But there's always something, right? So
Yeah, I mean, there is, isn't there? I've worked on a few short films myself, and
yeah,
I can only
yeah,
imagine. I can only imagine what a feature film is like. So yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So you shot this in 2019, is that correct?
We shot it in 2017.
Oh, okay. So quite a while ago now for you. Okay,
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah, it is.
but I
And it,
suppose.
yeah, sorry.
No, go on, go on.
So we shot it in 2017 in September around my birthday, and then
Okay.
for like a week. And then I went home and I tried to find an editor, but at that time, because everything was coming together so spontaneously, everyone was booked out. I couldn't find anyone, and so I edited myself the film. That was not the plan initially, and that took,
Wow.
of
There you
course,
go.
time. That took some time,
Yeah.
and post production, everything. So basically, it was really just getting finished for the premiere at the Max Ophüls Film Festival in Saarbrücken in Germany,
Yeah.
and it was a long phase to get everything ready. Also because it was such a short period of time that we had to prep. Then we went down there, we shot the movie. I came home, I wanted to start editing, and I felt like, boy, I didn't really had any time to digest everything, and get a distance to the material. And I think that's very important. And so while I was editing, I was trying to, go away for a week, like let it sit and then come back. So I would, work with it, but trying to get a
Yeah.
distance at the same time. And that was really a challenge. But it was just, it was beautiful. I loved it. And I learned so much from it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I think it's super interesting to have a bit of more insight into your process, and I think that what you say is very true. It's sometimes difficult, isn't it, to step away, but it's sometimes very important. It's like a fresh pair of eyes, as they say. The reason I ask is just because I have to sort of ask, because with the whole COVID thing, I always ask. So you've had actual physical cinema screenings with your film. You've been, yeah. So I did the Q&A I did yesterday was for a different feature film, and that started its film festival journey at the beginning of last year. So that's not had a screening in a cinema. So I guess the question that's coming is still slightly relevant to you, but I suppose not as relevant. And it's how I suppose you think the pandemic affected your film's release. I mean, I suppose it didn't really, but I guess, what's your opinion on the virtual screenings, for example? Are you totally against that, or are you embracing that?
I'm totally embracing everything, really.
Okay.
That comes my way. I mean, what choice do we have now, really? So I'm so grateful. I'm seriously, I'm really grateful for that opportunity that people can see it. And everything has its advantages and disadvantages, of course. And the film was intended to be seen in cinema, yes, because it is actually a quiet movie, I would say, and nature had such a big part of it that you also have very layered sounds of natures, and that is together with the pictures intended more for cinema, I would say. But we had screenings here in Germany in 2019, start and end of 2019, and then the pandemic hit, yes, and we were in plan for another festival here in Germany before we would actually have like other screenings, and everything was canceled. And that was, of course, a shock, and it was sad, but then again, what can you do? I mean, everyone is affected equally. And so I was very pleasantly surprised how fast festivals made that turnaround to virtual or online viewings. That was really, really great, because it provided us with new opportunities, to share it with an even bigger audience, actually. And we had a screening in Glasgow and in Portugal last year in October, and that was just really cool, to have that possibility, although everything was so crazy. And so, yeah, I'm really happy that we're now screening with you and with the SF Indie Fest, and I hope people enjoy it at home and really have a good time while watching.
Well, exactly. It's brilliant that you say that, because I do think it's all about looking at the silver linings, and I think a theme that's been prevalent throughout this interview is that you've really do that, embracing what comes your way. And I think the ultimate way of doing that is in the face of a global pandemic. And if it wasn't for the, like you said, if it wasn't for the global pandemic, I wouldn't have been able to do this interview, because it would have probably been over in the States or whatever. So loads of silver linings. So I'm glad that you have that opinion and you've embraced it. So lastly, I have a couple of last questions, and I don't mean to put you on the spot at all with this next question, because the only, no, not to scare you. The only reason I put it in there is because when I watch a lot of interviews and podcasts and stuff, I'm always quite intrigued when I hear this question pop up, and it's just, do you have any advice for other filmmakers, for younger filmmakers? Maybe I realise you're relatively young yourself, but I just wonder if you had anything that you've learned from this that you would maybe tell to other filmmakers, or anything like that.
Basically, never give up, and just do and create and trust yourself. Really trust yourself. You got it. You got this, because I mean, we're all so full of self-doubts, and there's always something that's in the way or that we're lacking. But then again, maybe that's not really what you need. And what you need is just to do it, and go out and play, have fun.
Just start. Yeah. That's wonderful. I'm glad that you could get it so quick. Like, some people I asked, they're like, oh, they're like, oh, what have I got to say? This has got to be perfect. But no, that came out very, very
I'm not trying to be clever. It's just really what I'm always telling myself as well. Just create and do and have fun, and go out there.
Awesome. I'll that question's for myself, really. I have to say, it's not for anyone.
Oh, okay.
So the last question, Katrina, is just, what's next for you? Do you have any other projects coming up, or films that you're working on now? Obviously, I know the current climate is a bit difficult, but just generally, what is next for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is a really good time to be developing ideas. And so I'm in the middle of that. I'm actually in a development program with a serious idea about the climate collapse or climate crisis. And that is something that I'm working on right now. And that still is under wraps, and it still needs some time because we just started the process. But that is something. And I'm also working on 2 different ideas for a documentary. That's something, that is, I mean, I'm a fictional director, yes, but I like to experiment. I like the challenge. I like to try out different things. And I think, especially coming from the film I've just made, it really piqued my interest even more in working, like in an authentic world and setting, and working with or working documentary style. I was about to say, but now I'm just in the loss of.
No, that's super interesting. I always like to ask filmmakers, because there's always the next thing, isn't it? That's the thing with filmmaking. It's always what's next. So
yeah. Sure.
But anyway, I want to say thank you for making this film. Thank you for submitting it to the festival, sharing it with people. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope everyone that's watched the film and watched this video has enjoyed it. And all that's left to say is, I hope everyone watching has a lovely festival. And Katrina, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And let me just also say, I really hope you enjoy the film, and please stay healthy and positive.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, and take care. I'll see you later.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.